March 14th, 2026, 3:17 a.m. local time. Residents in Ramat Hasharon, a wealthy suburb just north of Tel Aviv, woke to a sound they had never heard before. Not the familiar wail of air raid sirens, not the distant boom of interceptors engaging targets overhead. This was different. A sharp, violent crack that rattled windows across the city, followed immediately by a shockwave that set off car alarms for kilometers in every direction. Then, the explosions. Multiple impacts within seconds of each other. Massive fireballs, erupting from what locals knew as the restricted industrial zone on the eastern edge of town. The facility that everyone understood was important, but nobody talked about publicly. Israel Military Industries, IMI, the largest weapons production complex in Israel, and it was burning. Iran just announced that 4 Fattah 2 hypersonic missiles struck the facility with precision. The Israeli government has not denied it. Let me tell you exactly what just happened and why this single strike may have done more damage to Israel's military capability than the last 1,000 missile attacks combined. The IMI complex in Ramat Hasharon is the industrial backbone of Israel's entire defense apparatus. This facility produces approximately 30% of all ammunition used by the Israeli Defense Forces. It manufactures critical components for the Merkava main battle tank, guidance systems for precision munitions, and propellant for aero interceptor missiles. The facility employs over 3,000 workers across multiple production lines running 24 hours per day. The replacement value, somewhere north of $4 billion, and that is just the physical infrastructure. The intellectual capital, the specialized workforce, the proprietary manufacturing processes cannot be replaced quickly. Iran just struck the one target in Israel that directly degrades Israeli military capability, not by destroying weapons already built, but by preventing weapons from being built in the future. Let me explain what a Fattah 2 hypersonic missile actually is. The Fattah 2 is Iran's most advanced ballistic missile. The name Fattah means conqueror in Arabic. This missile has a range of approximately 1,400 kilometers, more than enough to reach any point in Israel from Iranian territory. It uses a 2-stage solid fuel propulsion system, meaning it can be launched within minutes with no vulnerable preparation time. The Fattah 2 reaches speeds exceeding Mach 13 during its mid-course phase. That is over 16,000 kilometers per hour. The missile crosses the distance from Tehran to Tel Aviv in approximately 12 minutes. The final approach phase is where it becomes truly terrifying. The warhead separates and begins a hypersonic glide. It is maneuverable, adjusting its trajectory during descent. It does not follow a predictable ballistic arc, and it impacts at speeds between Mach 8 and Mach 10. At those velocities, even a near miss from an interceptor may not destroy the incoming warhead. Iran claims they fired 4 Fattah 2 missiles at the IMI complex. Satellite thermal imaging from commercial providers confirms at least 3 major impact sites within the facility perimeter. That means at minimum, 75% of the missiles reached their targets. Israel's Arrow 3 and David's Sling systems, the ones specifically designed to intercept this class of threat, either did not engage or failed to achieve kills. Here is why. The Arrow system was built to counter ballistic missiles following predictable trajectories, calculate the launch point, predict the apex, position the interceptor, and destroy the target during its vulnerable mid-course phase when it is traveling in a straight line at constant velocity. The Fattah 2 does not cooperate with those assumptions. Its trajectory is not predictable. Its velocity is too high for intercept geometry to work reliably. And its terminal phase maneuvering means even if you get close, close is not good enough. You need a direct hit or near simultaneous detonation. The Arrow interceptor costs approximately $3 million per shot. Reports suggest Israel fired at least 6 interceptors at the incoming Fattah 2 salvo. That is $18 million in defensive expenditure. The result? 3 impacts on target. $18 million spent. $4 billion in damage sustained. The mathematics do not favor the defender. Now, let me walk you through what the IMI facility actually produces and why losing it matters strategically. Start with ammunition. The facility manufactures 100mm artillery shells, the primary munition for Israel's M109 self-propelled howitzers and towed artillery pieces. Israel has been firing these shells at rates exceeding 10,000 rounds per month during sustained operations. IMI produced approximately 40% of Israel's domestic artillery ammunition supply. That production line is now offline. Israel will need to rely entirely on imports from the United States and emergency purchases from other suppliers. But American artillery ammunition is also constrained. The U.S. has been supplying Ukraine at rates that have depleted American stockpiles significantly. There is not unlimited surplus available to backfill Israeli losses. Next, tank components. IMI manufactures armor packages, fire control systems, and transmission assemblies for the Merkava tank, Israel operates approximately 2,600 Merkava tanks across all variants. These vehicles require constant maintenance, part replacement, and upgrades. Without IMI production, that sustainment pipeline just got choked. Israel can still operate its existing tank fleet. But combat losses cannot be replaced, damaged vehicles cannot be fully repaired, and planned upgrades to install active protection systems on older Merkava variants will be delayed or cancelled. Then there are the precision munitions. IMI assembles guidance kits that convert unguided bombs into precision weapons. The Israeli Air Force has been using these extensively. Each strike requires multiple precision munitions to ensure target destruction while minimizing collateral damage. Losing domestic production means Israel becomes entirely dependent on American supply of JDAM kits and other guidance packages. That dependency is a strategic vulnerability because American supply comes with American oversight and potential restrictions. If you are finding this level of analysis valuable, the kind that connects technical capability to strategic outcome, hit the subscribe button. This channel exists because mainstream coverage shows you the explosions but does not explain what the explosions mean. I do the second part. You will not get this anywhere else. Here is the economic dimension of what just happened. The IMI facility represents years of capital investment, specialized tooling, and workforce training. You cannot rebuild this quickly. Israel can construct new buildings within months, but installing the precision machinery required for ammunition manufacturing, that takes years. The tooling for artillery shell production is not off-the-shelf equipment. It is custom-built, calibrated to micron tolerances, and requires extensive testing before it can produce munitions that meet military specifications. The specialized workforce is even harder to replace. IMI employed engineers and technicians with decades of experience in explosive chemistry, metallurgy, and precision manufacturing. These are not skills you acquire in a 6-month training program, and many of those workers were on site when the missiles hit. Casualty figures have not been released, but impacts occurring at 3:17 a.m. suggest the night shift was present. Estimates put night shift staffing at around 800 personnel. Early reports from Israeli emergency services indicate multiple fatalities and serious injuries. Even if the physical facility could be rebuilt quickly, the human capital loss is catastrophic. Israel just lost a generation of defense industry expertise in a single strike. The replacement timeline for full IMI production capability is measured in years, not months. Optimistic estimates suggest 18 to 24 months to restore 50% of pre-strike output. Full restoration? 3 to 5 years, assuming no additional attacks and unlimited funding. During that entire period, Israel's military is operating with degraded sustainment capability. Now let me show you the strategic calculation Iran just made. The Fattah 2 missile costs Iran approximately $2 to $3 million per unit to produce. 4 missiles, call it $10 million total expenditure. The damage inflicted, $4 billion in physical infrastructure destroyed, plus years of lost production capacity, plus degraded Israeli military readiness across multiple systems. That is a 400 to 1 return on investment. But the real strategic value is not measured in dollars. It is measured in operational tempo. Israel can no longer sustain high-intensity operations at the same rate because the ammunition and parts pipeline just got severed. This forces Israeli military planners to ration munitions, prioritize targets more carefully, and reduce overall sortie rates. Iran just imposed a strategic constraint on Israeli freedom of action without needing to destroy Israeli aircraft or tanks directly. They destroyed the factory that keeps those systems running. This is systems-level warfare. Do not attack the weapons. Attack the supply chain. Do not engage the military directly. Degrade its sustainment infrastructure. Iran learned this approach from watching American operations over the last 3 decades. The U.S. military depends on enormous logistical networks to sustain operations. Those networks have vulnerabilities. Iran just demonstrated they understand how to exploit equivalent vulnerabilities in Israeli military infrastructure. Here is what the Israeli government is saying publicly. The Defense Ministry issued a statement confirming that a defense industry facility was struck, but characterizing the damage as limited and claiming production. We'll resume shortly. That statement is technically true and strategically dishonest. Yes, some portions of the IMI complex remain operational. The administrative buildings were not hit. Some secondary production lines and reinforced structures survived. But the critical high-volume manufacturing areas, the ones producing artillery ammunition and propellant, those took direct hits. Satellite imagery shows 3 distinct impact craters within the main production zone. Each crater is approximately 15 meters in diameter. The blast damage radiates outward over 100 meters from each impact point. Thermal signatures indicate fires burned for over 6 hours after the strike. That is not limited damage. That is catastrophic damage being spun for public consumption. The claim that production will resume shortly is even more misleading. clearing debris, assessing structural integrity, replacing destroyed equipment. That is months of work before a single production line can restart. And that assumes Israel has access to replacement machinery, which in many cases is manufactured by foreign suppliers with lead times measured in years. The international response has been predictably muted. The United States condemned the attack as an escalation and reaffirmed its commitment to Israeli security. But condemnation does not rebuild factories. An American commitment is increasingly constrained by American capability limits. The U.S. can provide financial assistance for reconstruction. It can supply replacement munitions from American stockpiles, but it cannot wave a magic wand and restore Israeli production capacity overnight. European allies issued statements expressing concern. Those statements mean nothing operationally. Russia and China remain silent, which speaks volumes about their assessment of Iran's action. Neither country sees strategic benefit in criticizing Iran for a strike that degrades a U.S. ally's military capability. The silence is tacit approval. Let me give you the numbers that explain why this attack represents a turning point. Before this strike, Israel was already struggling with munition consumption rates that exceeded production. During the first 2 weeks of sustained operations against Iranian forces and proxies, Israel fired an estimated 60,000 artillery rounds, 4,500 precision-guided munitions, and 1,200 air defense interceptors. Israeli domestic production could replace approximately 30% of those expenditures monthly. The other 70% came from stockpiles production entirely. Israeli domestic replacement capacity drops to perhaps 10 to 15% of monthly consumption. That means Israel becomes almost entirely dependent on American supply for sustained operations. And American supply is not unlimited. U.S. artillery ammunition production is running at approximately 36,000 rounds per month as of early 2026, up from 14,000 per month in 2024, but still far below the rates needed to support both Ukraine and Israel simultaneously at current consumption levels. The Pentagon has already warned Congress that continuing to supply both conflicts at current rates will deplete American stockpiles below the minimum levels required for U.S. military readiness. Something has to give. Either Ukraine gets less, Israel gets less, or American forces accept degraded readiness. None of those options are politically comfortable, but the arithmetic is non-negotiable. Here is what comes next. Iran has demonstrated that Israeli strategic infrastructure is vulnerable to precision strikes. The IMI facility is not the only critical node. Israel has several other major defense production sites. Rafael Advanced Defense Systems in Haifa produces the Iron Dome interceptors and Spike missiles. Israel Aerospace Industries operates multiple facilities producing UAVs, radar systems, and missile components. Elbit Systems has manufacturing plants across Israel. Every one of these facilities is now a potential target for follow-on Fattah 2 strikes. Israel cannot defend them all simultaneously. The mathematics of air defense coverage do not allow it. Iran can choose when to strike, which target to hit, and how many missiles to allocate. Israel has to defend everywhere all the time with limited interceptors. Advantage: attacker. The strategic dynamic has fundamentally shifted. Israel's military power was built on a foundation of domestic defense production that ensured independence from foreign supply constraints. That foundation just cracked. Israel is now in a position where sustaining military operations requires continuous American support, not just for advanced systems, but for basic munitions. And that dependency gives Washington leverage over Israeli decision-making that did not exist before. If the U.S. decides Israeli operations are escalating beyond acceptable limits, the threat of restricting ammunition resupply becomes a credible constraint on Israeli freedom of action. Share this video because what I just explained will not appear in mainstream reporting. They will show you footage of the burning factory. They will quote Israeli officials saying damage was limited. They will move on to the next story. They will not tell you that Israel just lost 30% of its ammunition production capacity. They will not explain that the Fattah 2 hypersonic cannot be reliably intercepted. They will not do the math on how long Israeli stockpiles last without IMI production. They will not connect this strike to the broader strategic vulnerability of supply chain-dependent military operations. I just did. The IMI complex is burning. The machinery is destroyed. The workforce is casualties. The production lines are offline for years. And Iran demonstrated they can hit strategic targets deep inside Israel with weapons that Israeli defenses cannot stop. This is not a tactical event. This is a strategic inflection point. 4 missiles. $10 million, $4 billion in damage. Years of degraded capability. The mathematics are clear. The implications are terrifying. And the next strike could come at any time because Iran just proved the concept works.